All right, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Again, my name is Adam Sotak. I'm the Public Engagement Director here at NC Child, and we appreciate very much you joining us for our first legislative update weekly call for 2021. Let's hope that it's a good, productive, and healthy year for everyone moving forward. And so we're really excited about the agenda we have today. I got some really good topics and speakers. But first, I want to go over some logistical issues just real quick. So the session is completely bilingual in English and Spanish. We're very happy to be bringing it to you in that way. And we have a live interpreter on the line. Everyone will need to choose either the Spanish or English channel to hear the audio. And you can see on your screen that highlighted. If you do not choose an audio channel, you will not be able to hear the presenters. To choose a channel, look for the little image of a globe and the word interpretation on the bottom right side of your Zoom screen. Click and choose Spanish or English. If you choose the Spanish channel, you will hear the interpreter speaking in Spanish. You will also be able to hear the English language presenters at a low volume in the background. If you do not want to hear English in the background, you can click the globe icon again and choose Mute Original Audio. Presenters, this is for you. Please be sure to speak slowly and clearly and take some breaks while you're talking. That will make our interpreter's job much easier. This is for everyone. We have a lot of participants in this webinar, so we're going to keep everyone on mute to preserve audio quality. To ask the presenters a question at any time, type your question into the chat box. Finally, this session is being recorded, so you will be able to share that and view it again if you'd like. And it will be available in both English and Spanish, and you'll get an email, follow-up email with those video links, okay? So hopefully that is all clear and everyone is good on the technical front. Again, I want to welcome you all. We're going to have some words of welcome and hope from our Executive Director Michelle Hughes here in a minute, and then Matt Gross, the Legislative Liaison for DHHS, has been kind enough to join us again today and provide an update. And we're going to hear from Ashley Perkinson about the state legislature, and Whitney's going to give us a federal policy update. I must say, I guess I'm just a policy nerd, but I am more hopeful seeing the proposal, the stimulus proposal that came out last night than I have been in a while, thinking about some of the possibilities that lay ahead. And then Fawn's going to talk a little bit about messaging guidance, and then we will adjourn. So without any further ado, I would like to pass it over to Michelle.
Thanks, Adam. And thank you guys for being here today. I know it's Friday. It's been incredibly long and stressful past couple weeks. And so we really appreciate you all being part of this conversation and discussion. And I really just wanted to take a couple of minutes to open up and first welcome you and thank you, most importantly, for all of the amazing advocacy work that you did in 2020 and that I know you're going to continue to do in 2021. We could not make these wins for children and for families without your partnership. So thank you all for the amazing work that you have done. These are incredibly hard, challenging, and frankly, dark times in our country, but particularly for children. And their lives have been turned upside down from COVID, from school closings, from the impact of the economy on their families in just so many ways. So we are grateful to have you all being voices for children. It can all feel too much. I know that over the past couple of weeks, I have been like, too much. This is just too much. And when we look at the attack on our country and our democracy by white supremacists and right-wing militants last week, it can definitely feel too much. And I have so many emotions, as I know many of you have as well: grief and anger and fear and anxiety and worry. And I am a white woman, so I can only imagine the impact of these racist events on our Black and brown colleagues and on the Black and brown children of our state and our nation. And so as we look moving forward, I want to not give in to one emotion, and that is despair. Because we have so much work to do for children and for families, and we must stand with the brave elected officials and those police officers like Eugene Goodman, who upheld the Constitution, who upheld democracy despite being in harm's way. We all, and our children, most importantly, deserve a government that cares for all of us. Democracy is not something that a violent mob can take away from us and from our children. Democracy is something that we are doing every day together as advocates and as citizens and as voters. Democracy is what you all are doing every day when you speak up for kids, when you call your legislator, when you email your elected officials, when you participate in these calls with advocates across the state, and when you're talking about what children need and when you're advocating for it. So I'm asking you, in the same way that I'm asking myself, to not give in to despair and despondency as we move forward, because you are resilient. You are tough advocates for kids. I've seen you in action. There's a lot going on, but we can make a difference as we claw out of this crisis for our state and our country if we do it together, and if we support each other, and if we share information, and if we coordinate our advocacy activities. We are going to make a difference for kids in 2021. And as Adam said, I actually have a lot of hope as we move forward. And so I'm going to move to two just business items and then hand it over to Matt, who I can see in the corner over there. Two things that I wanted to bring up. One is the save the date for our Voices for Children event. So as you all know, every other year we have an event that celebrates some amazing child advocates in our state. This year, the date is April 16th, so please hold it on your calendar. It is virtual, it is short, 1 hour of your Zoom time to celebrate Cassandra Brooks with the Tom V. Advocacy Award. For those of you who know Cassandra, you know how well-deserved this award is. She is an amazing voice for early education, for Medicaid expansion, and for children of color and children across our state. So we are pleased to recognize Cassandra's work. We are also accepting nominations for the Community Voices Award. This is an award that goes to a group at the local who are working in local communities at the local level to represent and advocate for the needs of their kids, and working at the state level to hear those needs speak those needs to their legislators. So we hope that you all will nominate a group that you may be working with in your local community to be a recipient of the Community of Voices Award. And so without further ado, please take care of yourselves, get some rest, take a deep breath for 2021. And we really are looking forward to working with you in this coming year. So Adam, I guess I will hand it back to you.
Yes, thanks so much, Michelle. And I am going to now turn it over to the man between two ferns in honor of one of my favorite North Carolina comedians, Zach Galifianakis, Mr. Matt Gross with DHHS. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you for having me. You know, it was intimidating enough for you to open this by saying we need to speak slowly and pause a lot because I'm terrible at that. But then to follow Michelle's words are even harder, but I will do my best. Thank you for those opening comments. So yes, COVID response, I will say we are living in a world of everything is vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. So let me give you all a little bit of a status update, but I really want to save some time for questions because I know there's a lot of questions. So, you know, vaccine, has started flowing into the state about a month ago. When we did our initial allocations, there was a big focus on ensuring equitable access across the state. So we did all of our initial allocations just purely based on population, which we think was important and the right thing to do to ensure that there aren't, vaccine deserts appearing across the state with what is frankly a limited supply. So in reality, the state is to a vast degree going to be a vaccine desert, but we're not wanting to get to where there's counties that don't have any. What we saw in the initial few weeks of the rollout are a few things. One is frankly, and this is concerning, I think, for all of us, vaccine hesitancy among some healthcare workers. I think particularly healthcare workers of color, which, makes total sense. There has been, people have faced so much racism and injustice in the healthcare system. Of course, the awful things like the Tuskegee experiments and whatnot. So understand why there's hesitancy. We have a massive campaign we've been working on to try to help build confidence. We have a vaccine 101 training that we do too to help folks and get it deeper into the community. We have a historically marginalized population work group that's really trying to get to that granular level of, how do you find that lead nurse in that long-term care facility that's respected by the staff, that is willing to step up and be like, I got this shot, it's safe, get it. We are hopeful that, based on anecdotal reports, a lot of healthcare workers are saying, well, when you come back to do other people's second shot, if my coworkers seem fine, I'll probably get their first shot. So we hope those numbers will tick up. But that added to a bit of the slower rollout. Also, data entry is really key. We had to launch an entire new data system to track this. And what we're finding across the state is often numbers are lower in the system than they are in reality. So we have an army of folks that are just doing data entry for counties to try to get that up to speed. So we have a good sense of where odds actually are going into arms and aren't going into arms. I will say, one of the things we're starting to do with allocations, because we're very focused on getting shots into arms more quickly, we don't ever like being ranked in the bottom of anything, is where we still have the baseline county population numbers to give allocations. We are taking into consideration how much is showing up in the system is on the shelf. Now we're giving entities a chance to say, hey, those numbers aren't right. We've got to get the data updated. But bottom line is you need to show to us that you can get shots into arms quickly. Thus far, the vaccines have been mainly flowing to hospitals and local health departments. We're starting to expand that out into some of the FQHCs and rural health centers. Also, I know there's some specific instances, like, for example, Halifax County, where they have a really great local pharmacy that wanted to step up and help. So that health department is partnered with that pharmacy to help administer shots more quickly. So it's evolving. Also, yesterday, we announced a number of high throughput sites that are standing up across the state. I'll put a few links in the chat when I'm done talking that show both, one, the resource where you can find a shot anywhere in any county, two, the list of where we're doing the high throughput sites, three, the infographic on where we are. One of the things that's been tough with this is the guidance keeps changing. We made up our own allocation formula, got vaccine, started doing shots, and then a week or so later, the CDC said, here's how you should prioritize, which was clearly a little late since we've been doing shots. So you probably saw that change in early December. They changed it again this week, about 10 minutes before we presented to the Oversight Committee. So where we are today is, from a state perspective, anybody who is 65 or older and anybody who is a healthcare worker, plus anybody in long-term care, should have access to the vaccine. That being said, it will vary by site. There are sites that are still saying like, hey, we're still focusing our 75 and over population. And that's frankly, if they're getting shots in arms, that's okay. When you look at the data, you see significantly worse outcomes for folks that get this who are over 75. So just because we said you can go to 65 doesn't mean you have to. And again, as long as shots are quickly getting into arms, if folks are limiting a little more, that's okay. They got to keep working through their plan. So it's going to vary a little bit based on the county and based on the setting. But we're really trying to increase throughput dramatically. Be on the lookout, because we're in conversations with other folks about some pretty exciting other large-scale vaccination events coming up. One of the things that's different about vaccination than testing is you have to have a little more medical support nearby. You also have to schedule that second shot, because you're giving somebody a medical treatment. You're not just swabbing the nose, which is a slight medical treatment, but not nearly as invasive. And you have to have that second shot scheduled to follow up too. So it's a little more complex than just setting up the testing, but we're actually working with a lot of vendors that have experience setting up community events. And the thing that we're still grappling with is we want speed, but we don't want speed at the sacrifice of equity. So where you're seeing a big push for speed right now, because we don't want our state allocation to get decreased by the feds, we still have a big eye on equity, because it doesn't do us any good if the communities that are getting hit the hardest by this virus aren't getting access to the vaccine, or when they have access, don't have the information they need to feel confident to take it. So we're very focused on both of those fronts. With that, I'm going to pause, because I know there's been a lot of vaccine questions, to see if y'all have any questions. That's just a little high level.
Please feel free to put those in the chat, y'all, if you're willing to do that. Matt, while folks are doing that, just real quick, am I correct in saying that y'all have contracted with pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens to do the long-term settings?
So yeah, that's actually a federal program. So the Fed set up a program where we take some of our state allocation and set it aside. And then CVS and Walgreens makes appointments to go out and get into the long-term care facilities. I think it's gone reasonably well. I won't say great, but reasonably well. You know, it's a big lift. One thing to remember, because the way the vaccine comes, the Pfizer ships in packs of 975 doses and requires ultra cold storage. Moderna is packs of 100 doses and doesn't require the ultra cold storage, so it's a little more portable. So we set aside our Moderna allocation for that program, but that came a couple weeks later. So the long-term care program didn't really kick off until December 20th, because I've heard some folks saying, oh, well, I know hospital workers that had their second shot, some long-term care that haven't had their first. Well, the program started a few weeks later. But it's ramping up. It is controlled by the feds. We're trying to get a little more visibility into some of the data there, and I think that's going to improve next week, but we haven't had quite the visibility that we were hoping for in that. But I think it's getting a little bit better. I see some questions popping up in the chat.
Yep. Yeah, Fawn, do we have some questions there?
Yeah, first question came from Robin Lane about who's managing the messaging, and is there coordination between players like health systems and the state?
Oh yeah, so we're leading on a lot of the messaging. The website that I'll stick in here, which I'll say it out loud, but I'll stick it in there too. yourspot.yourshot.nc.gov. That has all of our messaging, resources, links to our PSAs that we've been doing. All of the latest updates are on there. It's where you can find the links to where there are sites available. A lot of coordination between the health systems, the state, and the counties. I just was on a call one of the things that we're seeing is more transfers between systems, whether it's health system to county health department or vice versa, of, hey, I've got more shots, why don't we get them over to you so you can get them out the door because you've got more appointments than shots. A lot of good partnership has really been developing, especially in the last couple of weeks. I think rolling out over the holidays, particularly in a decentralized state like us, was challenging. And now that you're having, and I think it goes beyond just having like folks in the health department, what we're seeing is counties are moving other staff to assist the health department folks that were maybe out over the holidays. So we're seeing that increase. But yeah, a lot of coordination between health systems, between us. In fact, we have a weekly call with the hospital CEOs in a little bit that we do, although we're really talking to them on a much more regular cadence than that, in the course across their staff. But again, also that local coordination, that's really, really key. Again, we don't want to get to a place where we have counties where there's just no access at all. So we're worried about that. Right,
there's a great question from Leslie Kellenberger about foster parents. Are foster parents prioritized? There's just capacity issues with, experienced foster parents hesitant to take placements because they haven't been vaccinated.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. So right now, the most detail I frankly have is on healthcare workers and older adults. As these groups have continually shifted, we've had to kind of pull back and do a little bit deeper dive work. So I actually don't have a clear answer into the foster parents, other than to say any foster parents who are 65 and older right now have access. And those are some of the details. When we looked at what the feds put out, we're trying to align with it, but there's a lot of meat that has to get put on those bones. And that's one of those areas where it's not clear. So we're kind of diving in to do some of that sub work for the populations that are coming in the future, but we just went to 65 and up this week. So it's going to be a little bit till we get to those folks. And one thing also, just to do a quick plug when we talk about amount in the state, if every shot that's in the state was in an arm today, you'd be looking at about 6.5% to 7% of the state being vaccinated, which is a far cry from the 70% experts talk about you need for herd immunity. So at the end of the day, our best tool, and will be our best tool for months and months, remains the 3 W's: wearing a mask, waiting 6 feet apart, washing your hands, really avoiding intermixing of folks from multiple households indoors. As an extrovert, I can say that's been really hard, but I'm doing it. That remains our top tool. Getting vaccines in arms quickly is important, but it's going to be quite a while until we reach a place where we have herd immunity, really anywhere in the country, much less the state.
There's a question from Lee Boardley about sort of how our response compares to other states, and sort of, is there a particular barrier in North Carolina or maybe some particular advantages in other states that are doing better?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's really a lot of those factors I laid out up front that are kind of coming together. Some of it being, we if we wanted to just do speed off the front end, you would stick the vaccine in the most affluent places with the biggest health systems and just run it. And we knew that would just further add to the inequity issues we have in North Carolina. So we didn't want to do that. We intentionally got it around the state. And I think even though we've been dinged on speed a little bit, that was still the right call. We're working on picking up speed now by really trying to assess who is effectively getting into arms and who is not, and beefing up support for those folks. Again, some of it's data reporting. I'm not going to say all of it, it's just some of it. But it's a lot of, it's not just one thing. It's a lot of little things, whether it's been, some of it's also reframing how people do appointments. In the medical world, they tend to think of, you get the supply on hand and then you do the appointment. We don't find out until about 5 to 6 days before a shipment comes how much we're getting in the state. So to do allocations and tell health departments and hospitals, they don't find out until a few days before. So it's uncomfortable to want to schedule appointments when you don't know how much vaccine you're getting, but we're pushing them. You're going to have to do it. Let folks know it's tentative, let them know it's a spot on a list, but they need to schedule further out, which just kind of goes against standard practice. So we're trying to push on that. I'll also say the numbers vary widely. This week I've seen us as low as 48th and as high as like 31st, depending on what day you look and where the data dumps happen. So we're not satisfied with 31st. We want to be one of the top, but it's still very, very early on. So, Secretary has challenged us and challenged everybody that has vaccine to get every shot into every arm. We're pushing folks. They need to show us how they're going to run through their supply. We want to get to the place that we're running out of shots so we can be screaming at the feds. We need more shots. That is the goal. Is how can we try to up our overall state allocation by showing that it's all in arms, we need more.
All right, I know you have limited time, Matt, but we're going to take a couple of quick questions. Queen de Graffenried asked about how to get a copy of the Vaccine 101 curriculum.
Yeah, so we're doing some training the trainers. What might work, let me check. We might have an opportunity to have somebody, maybe if y'all are interested, do a training like that with part of NC Child, to do a training like that for the network. Would be happy to do that and then get that resource out to everybody, because we'd love to walk people through the deck and then answer questions that folks have. So happy to set up a train the trainer kind of session with NC Child if y'all are interested.
Okay, we can follow up on that with the network. That sounds great. And then last question is from Rachel Radford. For parents of special needs kids, this is a big question, is sort of, is there going to be any prioritization to help folks kind of get back into the services, respite, caregiving, all the things that special needs parents are really struggling with even more than others?
Yeah. So I think something that will hopefully help, and I'll put this in there, that now that we're going all healthcare workers, that really spreads out to folks that are providing some of those at-home resources. That's the group that wasn't able to get vaccinated before because it was only healthcare workers actively treating COVID patients. Now it's everybody that does any sort of healthcare support. So I'll send that deep dive out. I'll say it is a EG list. It's not a fully exhaustive list, but it's really for anybody serving patients. So that should help with that front. So I'll get that out to folks. But again, it's going to take time. If you look at all of the people in the state that would likely fall into this group of 65 and older or a healthcare worker, you're looking at noticeably more people than we have vaccine in the state. So just because we are saying it's open to this, it's going to take a while to work through everybody. And I'll say, we're seeing this everywhere. My dad lives in Florida, and he's currently on a waiting list. He's in a lottery with over 90,000 people at a place where they're giving out about 300 shots a week. So I think it's a challenge everywhere. So we certainly feel everybody's frustration, but we want to get to where when you look at the data, you're seeing that all the shots are getting into arms. So it's trying to find that right balance between speed and equity, but not really trying to really ramp up the speed. So I'll send some of the information out about both every site. We're working on high throughput sites, and this is going to keep evolving. So I'm happy to jump on and update folks, because it feels like it evolves throughout the day, much less by the week. One last plug I want to do before I leave, and I'm sure a number of you guys are following this, but it's certainly COVID related, but not just direct COVID. We, in partnership with Duke Margolis, have been having a North Carolina Council on Health Coverage meeting. group. It's been a great task force. They're going to have their fourth and final meeting. Oh, I did a direct message back. Let me send this to everybody. They are going to have their fourth and final meeting next Friday. So that's the link to that webpage with all the resources that we've had. You know, this pandemic has reinforced what all of us know, which is we have got to continue to increase access to healthcare in this state. You know, it has shined such important light on the ugly inequities and the impact they have on health outcomes for folks. You know, I know that Medicaid expansion remains an absolute top priority for us. I know it remains a bumpy road to get from where we are today to having it here in the state, but a road that we still want to go down. We really try to pull together a great group of folks to have collaborative conversations to figure out what is the set of priorities we need to say, like, hey, any bill that addresses health access should check these boxes. So the fourth and final meeting is next Friday from I believe 10 until 12:30. All of the previous meetings have been recorded. They're at that link. All of the materials from those meetings are at that link. So for folks working on healthcare access, you're probably following this already, but in case a few folks aren't, great resource, and again, remains an absolute top priority for us through all this work, because it reinforces how critical it is.
Thanks, Matt. That's a great reminder, and maybe gives us a little food for thought on our scheduling for next week too. But it has been great to see that group of stakeholders coming together, and NC Child remains committed to wanting to see Medicaid expansion happen here in North Carolina.
There was a great moment. I think it was the second meeting where we're talking about a bunch of different concepts. It was both Don Flo of Flo Automotive and Vivian Howard from Chef and the Farmer probably came out with the strongest pro-expansion statements of the whole meeting. It was great. I mean, that's been kind of the neat thing, is seeing, you know, we intentionally brought some different voices around the table. And it's great seeing these folks that are out in the community experiencing this, seeing the value and why we need to do it. So it was funny. I had a couple people text saying, "Who planted that with them?" I'm like, "We did not. That just came up organically, which is how you want it to be." So it was great.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Matt, and for all the hard work. And you know, we always appreciate the updates, and we'll get this info out to the network.
Sure, I'll drop some more links. If other questions come in, feel free to forward them along.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. So there's a update on the vaccine front mainly, and we will continue to keep the network informed on that and other things that come about. Now I am going to pass it along to Ashley Perkinson, who is the lobbyist for NC Child, and is going to talk a little bit about the state legislature, which has just gotten underway.
Thank you, Adam. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Matt, for that very helpful presentation on the vaccination rollout. Well, fasten your seatbelts, everyone. The 2021 long session of the General Assembly has arrived, and the legislature convened this past Wednesday. The session was mostly ceremonial, but we do have a better picture now of the landscape for committee chairs that will be leading these important committees this session. And I'd like to go over some of those appointments that were made. Also, Speaker Moore will continue as Speaker of the House. Senator Phil Berger was confirmed again as President Pro Tem of the Senate. We do have new big appropriations chairs on the House side. So the three chairs of the House Appropriations Committee will be Representative Dean Arp, and that is a promotion. This will be his first time as one of the big appropriations chairs. Representative Jason Sane from Lincoln County, and then also Representative Donnie Lambeth from Forsyth County will chair the big appropriations committee. The Health Committee, the House Health Committee, has also changed its leadership. As you remember, last session, Representative Josh Dobson was one of the committee chairs, and he won his election as Labor Commissioner. So the four House Health Committee chairs, both on the House Health Appropriations and the General House Health Committee, will be Representative Donna White from Johnston County. She's continuing as chair. Representative Larry Potts from Davidson County. He's also continuing as chair, but we have two new chairs with Representative Wayne Sasser, Cabarrus County, and also Representative Kristen Baker. She's a psychiatrist from Cabarrus County as well, and I believe the only physician currently in the General Assembly. So 4 new positions there on the House Health Committee side. On the Senate Health Committee front, last session, we saw Representative Joyce Krovic as chair. They have named 2 additional chairs, Senator Jim Perry and also Senator Jim Bergen will be stepping into those health committee chair positions on the Senate side. There was also a shakeup on the House Education Committee that I want to mention. Representative John Torbett, who was formerly one of the transportation chairs, will join Representative Hugh Blackwell and Representative John Hardister leading that House Education Committee. On the Senate side, Senator Mike Lee from New Hanover County. Remember, he was in the Senate a couple sessions ago, but then just won election again this past November. He will join Deanna Ballard as the Senate co-chairs of education. We also have a better picture now of what the timeline will be for the General Assembly's work. For most bills, not include the local bills, have an earlier deadline, but for most bills, the Senate bill filing deadline is April 6th, and then April 20th for the House bill filing deadline. That deadline is a little bit later for appropriations bills, but for general bills that don't have appropriations attached to them, you see that earlier April date. Crossover is the day that a bill must pass either the House or Senate in order to stay eligible for the next session. Crossover is May 13th. We also got a better picture as well of what leadership plans will be the next steps this coming session. And once the legislature comes back, now, as I mentioned, they were just in on Wednesday. They're taking a 2-week break and will come back January 27th. And when they do, what most everyone is expecting, the initial focus will be is continued allocation of federal dollars, both from the CARES Act that got the extension on time when those funds must be spent, and also the December bill that passed Congress that includes around $300 million for early child care initiatives. So we think that spending of the federal dollars will be one of the first items of business. And then, of course, as we see every year, when you start a long session, you start from scratch with the bill number. So you've got House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1. So a lot of new bills will be filed, and we anticipate, of course, the legislature will try again to prepare a budget and get that through. I've heard, we don't know for certain, but believe the governor's budget may be expected to hit around sometime in March. And then after that proposal is put forward, then both the House and Senate will put together their proposed budgets. But it will be a very busy session, and we look forward to continuing to give you these updates as the weeks come in session. And as always, if there are questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Ashley. And as a reminder too, after the meeting, when we send the email out, we'll make sure and send a link also to our 2021 legislative agenda, which we've already sent out, but that is just a reminder for folks. Any other questions in the chat for Ashley? Sorry, my landline's ringing.
I'm not seeing any coming up in the chat right now.
Ashley, could you just talk a little bit about budget conversations and sort of forecasts and what the chatter is around that?
Sure, absolutely. Now, as you remember, when we last met during the short session, there was really grave concern about what the revenue picture would look like for the state going into this long session. However, some of the recent revenue forecasts have been a much sunnier picture than what was feared. Also, the fact that the legislature ended up not passing the budget or agreeing on a budget with the governor during this last biennium means that there's additional funds, I think to the tune of around $4 billion that are in reserve and could be tapped into. There's still, since this has been such an unusual year, legislators are still continuing to get information on the revenue picture. But at least at this point, it seems like it is a bit of a sunnier picture than what was originally feared.
All right. Any other questions?
I see a question in the chat from Ms. Peltzer, and I think that would be a good one to follow up on afterwards because it's more specific. So I don't see anything else popping up, but we'll follow up with that one offline.
All right. Thanks so much, Ashley. Appreciate it as always. And now we are going to kick it over to Whitney Tucker, who's going to give us a federal legislative update.
Thank you, Adam. Y'all, I have been so excited to give this update since last night. So much has happened. It has definitely been quite a week. So bad news first, or I guess good news, depending on how you look at it. 2 days ago, President Trump became the first president in American history to be impeached twice. After the House approved a single impeachment article, 10 members of his party joined with the Democrats in the House to charge him with incitement of insurrection, citing his role in just whipping up that mob that stormed the Capitol last week. He now faces a Senate trial that could disqualify him from future office. And that's just one thing that the Senate is going to have to work through this year. So in more positive news, President-elect Biden unveiled his opening bid last night on COVID-19 relief and economic recovery. His proposal is known as the American Rescue Plan, and it is a $1.9 trillion stimulus deal that's meant to help the United States just address the health and the economic crisis related to this pandemic. The Biden-Harris administration is touting this plan as just part one, the rescue portion of a two-phased rescue and recovery plan to address the pandemic. So the plan includes many provisions that are important for children, and it really prioritizes changes to help those who have been hardest hit by the dual health and economic crisis presented by COVID-19, particularly Black and Brown people. An early analysis that was released last night by the Center on Poverty and Social Policy at Columbia University indicates that if just 5 of the most critical proposals that are included in this plan actually pass, it has the potential to cut child poverty in this country in half in 2021. It is a big deal.
Wow.
So what's in there? So much good stuff. The plan is divided into roughly 3 buckets. There's $400 billion for dealing with the coronavirus, including vaccines and testing. There's $1 trillion in direct relief to families, and about $400 billion in aid to communities and businesses. So in short, this is an expensive package, but it is really at the scale of the problem that we're facing right now. So I'm gonna run through some of the things that are in this proposal, and I might leave out some just for the sake of time, but we're gonna be sending out a full rundown via email, so you'll get that later. But among many other things, this proposal includes, importantly, $110 billion toward a national vaccination program and scaled up testing, including mobile vaccination units, domestic manufacturing of pandemic supplies, and a new disaster relief fund that is going to provide supplies and protective gear. It also includes $170 billion to help schools reopen safely, including about $130 billion that's going to K-12 schools, $35 billion for higher ed, and then another $5 billion just for governors to use to support educational programs for those who are hardest hit by COVID-19 in their states. There's also emergency paid leave The new administration really acknowledged the incredible level of need here, and it called for an expansion of emergency paid sick leave to 106 million more Americans. And it renewed a now expired requirement for employers to provide paid leave and to expand emergency paid leave to federal workers. This paid leave is actually also being expanded to some folks who are left out of earlier pandemic relief proposals, including contract workers and those who work for themselves as well. So that's great. You've also probably seen in the news that this one includes more stimulus checks. This proposal will add $1,400 to the latest round of stimulus checks so that families will have received a total of $2,000. And it also expands eligibility for the checks to adult dependents who were left out of previous rounds of COVID relief funding and to all mixed immigration status households, which is something that you all have helped us to call on our federal legislators for months about. So it is a really big deal. This proposal extends unemployment insurance. It would increase benefits from $300 to $400, and it would last through September of this year. And it also would continue extended benefits for people who have already exhausted their benefits or wouldn't normally qualify, like contractors and freelancers. There's housing assistance. The plan calls for extending the eviction and moratorium and foreclosure moratoriums through September of this year. It also includes $30 billion toward rental assistance and $5 billion in emergency assistance to secure housing for the homeless. There is an extension of the 15% increase in SNAP benefits that, again, you guys helped us to promote to members of Congress. This is going to make it easier for families to put food on the table. The plan includes an extension of that 15% increase in the maximum benefit through September, as well as $3 billion in special supplemental nutrition funding for the WIC program and $1 billion in nutritional assistance to U.S. territories that have previously been left out of a lot of relief efforts. There's also another really big one that we've been asking about for a long time now, guys, childcare assistance. So this plan is going to invest $25 billion in an emergency stabilization fund for childcare providers and an additional $15 billion to the Childcare and Development Block Grant Program. So you might remember that we've been calling for $50 billion throughout this pandemic, and this is a pretty good start at about $40 billion. We also see tax credits for children and low-income workers that, combined with the other elements of this plan, I think are going to make it a lot easier for families to not only afford necessities like food, but also to afford things like childcare that are really necessities. So it's going to expand the child tax credit to $3,000 per child up to age 17 and to $3,600 for children under age 6. It also increases the earned income tax credit from about $530 to $1,500, and it expands eligibility for that program as well. There's support for small businesses, about $50 billion going to governments and also small businesses in this proposal. And there is support that we have been calling for state and local governments that is going to help with the budget situation, not only here, but in all the other states where there has been this, consistent story that we really have to be stingy with our funds for public benefit programs and for other things that children and families really rely on because state revenues are really hurt right now. This plan includes $350 billion in funds for state, local, and territorial governments. And it's really being framed as money to pay for frontline workers, for school reopenings, and to get people vaccinated. But it's going to provide additional funding that will make it easier to use the funds that we already have at the state level to cover a lot of other needs that families have. There's also $20 billion in relief for public transit agencies and another $20 billion to support tribal governments' pandemic response all on its own. Oh, and one last thing that I really wanted to highlight for you guys that is a major move. This plan includes a $15 minimum wage, as well as an end to tipped minimum wage and sub-minimum wage for people with disabilities. It also calls on employers to provide hazard pay. But we know that right now, the minimum wage in this country has been stagnant for many years. And an increase to $15 on its own is doing a lot, but to actually get rid of sub-minimum wage, especially for tipped workers, so that we're not allowed to pay anyone in this country $2.13 an hour because we expect other people to be generous enough to pay their rent, is a very big deal. So this proposal is pretty much guaranteed support in the House, which has a slim Democratic majority and is controlled by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But in the Senate, things are a bit more complicated. Most of the provisions in this plan can be passed through the budget reconciliation process, which allows tax and budget-related legislation to pass with a simple majority in the Senate, rather than what they usually need, which is 60 votes. This makes it possible for a majority party to pass legislation without the support of the minority. Even so, President-elect Biden has already said that he plans to make an initial good faith effort to win support for this rescue plan without the use of the reconciliation process. So that would require that 60 votes in the Senate, which is now at an even 50-50 party split. So it's notable that the minimum wage increase, which is a really critical component to this anti-poverty, to the anti-poverty impacts of this plan, that piece can't be passed through the reconciliation process because it doesn't affect the federal budget. So its success is reliant on actual bipartisan support. So historically, spending reconciliation bills have only included mandatory spending, not annual appropriations, which are known as discretionary spending. So passing this through reconciliation in Congress would allow them to make changes like the ones that have been proposed to SNAP and other public benefit programs, but it wouldn't allow them to make changes to things like education funding because those are appropriated annually. However, that's just historical practice, and it turns out that that's actually not part of the law. So Democratic leadership plans to pass a fiscal year 2021 budget resolution that includes a COVID reconciliation bill that has both mandatory and discretionary appropriations spending, which is going to open the door for a lot more money for childcare and education and other priorities. But that's only if President-elect Biden is not successful in garnering the additional votes that he needs in the Senate to actually just get it passed through regular bipartisan means. So while the timing of all this is hard to predict exactly, just some things to watch at the federal level that are going to be coming up over the next few weeks. Next week, the new senators from Georgia and California are going to be sworn in, which is going to give Democrats a majority in the Senate. Senator Schumer and McConnell are going to reach an agreement on organizing the Senate. And so each committee is probably going to have equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans, but committee chairs are going to be able to move legislation to the floor even when the committee is tied. At least that's likely. That's what our national partners are hearing. And once that agreement on Senate organization is made, committee assignments are going to be made over the next few weeks in both the House and the Senate. So by early February, we should know most, if not all, of the federal committee members. And then the budget committees are going to start writing a federal budget resolution. Passing that resolution and getting the votes that are needed could actually take until March or April. And then Congress is going to work on the spending bill. So we'll see what happens next, but this is definitely a really exciting start to the new administration. And I think really evident of the change that we were able to usher in this country in this past election cycle. So, fingers crossed, guys, and keep an eye out. There's going to be a lot more on the horizon here.
And Whitney, did you say you're going to send out a write-up about that, or that will be part of the follow-up email that we send out today?
Yes,
Great.
exactly. So you do not have to have been taking notes this entire time or remember any of the things that I said. I said a lot, guys. But I didn't want to leave out a lot of these things because every time I tried to strike something, I thought this is really important to someone, which I think also really speaks to the strength of this proposal. Mm-hmm. And just keep in mind, this is just their first go at this, right? So this is the first thing that they're putting on the table. And we might see even more being proposed in, the next few weeks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Whitney. We really appreciate the overview. It's great to hear all the different potential moving parts of this. And I mean, a couple of things I'll just say. We have we had a question from Greg too, but there's a few things floating around in my mind real quick. One, the poverty fact you threw out is mind-blowing to me. Two, the Georgia, look at the history of the Georgia runoff election and why it was the racist reasons why it and other runoff elections have been instituted, and how bitterly ironic the outcome is and the position we're in federally as a result of that. Three, there's the issue also of DC statehood, which I think is very much going to be on the table. Has almost happened in the past, but that will be interesting to see how that unfolds. And then last but not least, these are all just random things I'm throwing together. Heard a statistic the other day that if the billionaires in the US gave every person $3,000, they would still be richer than they were at the start of the pandemic. So, do we have, Greg wanted to know, I think in here, you know, have we heard any initial reactions from our North Carolina senators? I imagine not, given the freshness of this.
No, so nothing yet, but you know, as they respond, we'll definitely be reporting that on future CAN calls for you guys.
And on the eviction moratorium, that was the second part of Greg's question. Whitney, is that extended by this?
So the question was just whether the eviction moratorium was extended at all. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat and it's a little difficult. So yes, there's an extension of the eviction moratorium through September, and also the foreclosure moratorium, which is really important because I think it addresses this, you know, obvious tension between having a moratorium on evicting renters who can't pay, but then there are also homeowners who can't afford to keep the properties without paying as well. So both have been extended through September of this year.
All right. So if there's no other questions for Whitney, then our last segment, last but not least, will be Fawn talking a little bit about some messaging advice or tips that we have.
Thanks, Adam. So for those of you who do communications work, you might, like me, you might be getting just bombarded with tips on good messaging during in our current crisis state. And I think what's really important, before I dive into this, I just want to say, you know your audience much better than I do, or any other, you know, listserv that you're on for communications does. So if your audience isn't paying attention to the political scene right now, the crisis of our democracy, the pandemic, all of that stuff, disregard this advice. But I wanted to share sort of a high level overview of some of the best thinking that we're seeing on how do you talk to your community right now when our context is nuts. And I think that that's what we wanted to bring you. So a lot of this is just tried and true messaging advice, but some of it is based on current focus groups and polling. It's really hard to know what to say right now when we're struggling ourselves to process, these shocking events that are going on and our own emotions as it's all unfolding. So I'm going to just give you some basic tips and some message examples that we're seeing, just kind of to help you think about this. Credit to these organizations, and I'm going to send you a written memo in the follow-up email with a little bit more detail. I'll run through this kind of quickly. So the one thing I want to say is acknowledge what's going on. You may have scheduled emails going out. You may have scheduled social media posts going out. You got to keep the context of pandemic and political violence in mind with what you're writing and what you're saying. That doesn't mean that everything you send out has to be some sort of official statement from your agency about, the state of the world. But this is people's context right now. And I think the options are either face it head on and lean into it, or, what I think a lot of people are doing is like, try to pretend that it's not happening and just, put out the thing I need to put out anyway. And it feels irrelevant. It can feel irrelevant, and we don't want our work to feel irrelevant. Our work is vital right now. So I think connecting those dots for people is really helpful. So here's just an example from Frameworks Institute. And I don't think I'm going to read this whole thing, but Frameworks is a messaging agency. And so what they sent out was like, here's why messaging is important. And they framed it in terms of what's going on right now. So anyway, I think the last sentence is really a good one to share. It's a little bit meta in response. We need to communicate and demonstrate our highest values. I really liked that. And I think it's a good example of how to talk about this stuff. So this is really important. We're mission-driven organizations. We want to lead with our shared values. We want to say what we are for, not so much what we're against. Everybody, we of course, we want to see our leaders disavow violence and things like that, and we can do that. But I think it's really important to talk about what we're here for and the missions that is our mission. So this is a really good example of that from Community Catalyst. They work on health policy, and I'll just read this one. A strong democracy is essential to our mission of fighting for a country where all people and communities have power over the decisions that affect our health, including and especially decisions made by policymakers. In order for the people to exercise our will, all elected officials must fulfill their duty to uphold and protect our Constitution. When they undermine that duty, we must hold them accountable in order to be able to protect our ability to fight for a country where all people can be healthy and free. And I think they really get their message across, their mission across in that last sentence. It's about people being able to be healthy. That's important in this conversation. So I think they did a great job with they're talking about the craziness in the world, but they're leading with their values around health. This is, I think, important in general in our messaging. Be explicit about race. Every one of us is affected by what's going on right now across all races, but some people are being much more severely impacted than others because of their race or because of their ethnicity. Call that out. We don't want to sweep that under the rug. And what we follow with is we're all in this together. It is easier for the opposition to try to divide us by race if we're not talking about race and if we're not showing how this affects everybody. So here's a quick example, messaging example of that from Community Catalyst. We're deeply concerned about the safety, and they put this out the day after the attacks. We're deeply concerned about the safety and well-being of everyone in the Capitol. The white supremacy that has led to stark health inequities among Black, Indigenous, and people of color is the same white supremacy that has emboldened violent protesters to storm our Capitol in an attempt to thwart a fair and free election. We hope for a peaceful and swift resolution, and we remain confident that democracy will prevail. So they're talking about how white supremacy is what's driving that attack, and that white supremacy is driving health inequities. That's really important, and I think they did a great job of putting that in the forefront. This I will say all the time in every messaging presentation: do not repeat the opposition's language. And you can see that I feel really strongly about this. No, don't do it. Never, ever, for any reason. Not to rebut them, not to say how outrageous they are. Don't retweet them, right? You don't retweet the president. It just gives their words power. Even when you think you're trying to rebut it or you're trying to show how ridiculous it is, the more you repeat it, the more you give it power. And here's a really quick example of how Voting Rights Lab is doing that with regards to messaging around, we just need to sweep this under the rug and we don't need to hold leaders accountable. What they're saying is the path to unity flows through accountability. The path to healing begins with justice. So they're not repeating, right-wing calls to say, we just need to come together and heal and forget about all this bad stuff, right? They're not calling that out. They're saying, this is the path to healing. I have tons more to share, but it's 12 o'clock, so I'm not going to try to do that. But I am going to skip ahead to my, last two things. Talk to children about this. We are sending out resources for that. And finally, always end with a solution. Make sure it's connected to the values that you're tapping: opportunity, fairness, equality. So this is our solution, right? We want everybody to come together, work together to advance democracy for children and families. Reach out to us, let us know how we can support you. So that's me ending on a solution, but that's the last tip I want to share, and I will send out our full messaging memo in the email that we send after this call today. So that's it.
Thank you, Fawn. Wonderful as always. And everyone, feel free to call upon us and Fawn if you've got other messaging questions or want to find some more resources. So I want to thank everyone. Michelle, would you?
I was just going to say, if folks are interested in like having an opportunity to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the messaging together, I think we could put together like a Zoom call with Fawn leading a conversation. Just email Fawn, and if we have enough folks wanting to do that, I think we could provide that support to people. Sorry, Fawn, I'm volunteering you on a phone call, but you're so good at
always
it.
up for a messaging conversation. Yeah, that sounds good. It looks like there is interest. Feel free to email me if you have questions. And as we wrap up, Whitney, do you have anything that you want to say to the group before we close things out today?
I do. So for those who haven't heard, I have accepted a new position at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities in Washington, and I'm going to be leaving NC Child. My last day is next week, Friday the 22nd, and I had hoped to get one last canned call in with you guys, but since the legislature is going on break until the 27th, it looks like I won't. I just want you to know that you guys are the foundation for our work. You're the foundation of our advocacy. And it has really been my pleasure to give you updates and to hear back from you and to work with you to push forward our policy goals, because it's working, y'all. Like, I love to see that the things that we have been pushing together are finally coming to the forefront. And I want you to know that I'm going to keep an eye on North Carolina, and I'm going to be working with some state level partners. So I'm not, really gone, and I'm going to keep putting out research that's going to hopefully help and support your work as you get a lot of policy change that children and families need and deserve. So thank you for being so great.
Thank you, Whitney, for everything you have done, and we look forward to continuing to work with you in other capacities. And also, side note, we are hiring for a replacement, although there is no replacement, but we're trying to fill Whitney's position. And so if you all on this Zoom have any folks that you want to pass that along to, please do.
And also, Ashley Perkinson, our fantastic lobbyist, is going to be filling some of those policy roles in the interim period between now and when we hire that full-time policy person. So don't worry, we're not leaving you hanging. There's still going to be lots of policy information coming out of NC Child and work being done. And so I am actually really glad to see that we're going to keep somebody, in the family in front of you guys until we're able to hire someone new.
Okay, so thanks again to everyone. We will be getting out follow-up information. Hope you all have a great long weekend, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.